Joining me now for an exclusive interview is Abbe Lowell. He's one of the most prominent defense attorneys in the country, and he is representing Don Lemon in his case against the Trump Justice Department. Abbe, we just showed Don there, of course. Everybody's been able to see him. He also did a YouTube Live people may have watched. But this is terrifying, no matter who you are. How is Don doing? I think a lot of people at home are wondering that.
I think people should be. I mean, no matter how solid you are and how much you've covered the news, when others get this happening to them, when it happens to you, it's a different event. I mean, let's talk about what happened first to Don, and then I'd like to talk about what it means to everybody else, okay? So what happened to Don was that for 30 years, he's done not just his job. It is his job, like it's your job to be a journalist. But that's a job that is protected, by the way, by something other than a contract you have with your network. It's protected by the First Amendment of the United States Bill of Rights. And so what he's done for 30 years is his job. And his job is to report on what it is that you saw he was doing in Minnesota. He is basically recording, sometimes video, sometimes by taking notes, what's going on around him. So that's what he did. Immediately, Attorney General Bondi, Assistant Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division, and who knows in the White House were already tweeting, this was a crime, we're going to go to get him. And so what do? You have to lawyer up. So he and I know each other. We got together. And what's the first thing I did? I wrote to the Department of Justice 10 days ago, and I said, I'm representing Don Lemon. I understand you might be investigating him. If you're going to take any action, do it the right way. You don't have to make a show of it. You don't have to make a circus of this. Get in touch with me.
And did you hear back from them?
I'm still waiting. So, all right, what else did they do? So not only did they basically attack as a crime something that you and others do that are protected by the First Amendment, they didn't do it just in the way you're supposed to. They wanted it to be terrifying. They wanted it to be intimidating. They wanted it to create fear. So he lives in New York. It's not Minneapolis. He's going to Los Angeles to do his job, which is to cover, in this case, the Grammys this weekend. They wait until he's in Los Angeles. That's not enough. They waited until 11:30 at night when he was coming back for doing what he does in the lobby of a hotel, and not one, not two, not three, but the bevy of agents surround and take him away. Don thought he was being mugged because he has been controversial, and he actually thought some crazy people on the right might be stalking him.
Can I pause just for a moment? Because I think it's so important for people to hear this. We just showed Georgia's video. How many agents surrounded him in the lobby?
I'm trying to count right now, but let's put it this way. It's more than the one that would have been necessary to do it the right way. And they're cloaked, and they're protected, and they're armed. This is to somebody who's not a threat, doesn't have a criminal record. He's not Maduro in Venezuela that you have to snap out. You basically have heard from his attorney, and they don't care about any of that. So they take him away, and that's what happened. But they didn't just take him away. Remember, they didn't just stalk him in Los Angeles. They did it at 11:30 at night so that they knew that he'd have to spend a night in jail for no reason whatsoever. But they did that on purpose. So they trail him to Los Angeles. They wait until 11, and they make sure that he has to spend a night in jail, knowing that we wouldn't be able to get in front of a judge until the next day. That's what happened to Don for doing his job. Now let's talk about what it means for everybody else. What it means for everybody else is that we've seen today the next step towards what you would have thought if I described what happened, you were describing what happened in pre-World War II Italy with Mussolini. The first thing the Trump administration did was they attacked lawyers. Then they attacked the journalists. And those are the two playbook kinds of plays that authoritarian governments have done through history in order to stifle dissent. And if that weren't enough, then they brought the people that are supposed to be policing, and they literally killed 2 peaceful protesters. If I described that to you, basically neutering lawyers, arresting journalists, and shooting protesters, you think I'd be talking about Tehran? You think I'd be talking about Italy in the 1930s or 40s? We're talking about the United States of America. So what does it mean to everybody? These are 2 basic rights. For example, the First Amendment, when they attack the lawyers, it's the Sixth Amendment. This is an administration that's not just willing to trample on the Bill of Rights. They're eager to do it. It's a warning sign. And if we can't rely on those Bill of Rights to protect you and Don and others who give us the news, or lawyers who come up and defend you when you do that, then we're in a lot more trouble than the average person believes.
Let me ask you about one of the legal tactics they seem to be using, because it seems like what I'm hearing from you is this is something they're trying out. We should just expect them to do it more. And I absolutely think we should. They seem to be, they reference what's called the FACE Act in this indictment here, which again is 14 pages. I'm not a lawyer, but anybody can be out there and read it. It has until recently been used to protect people's access to abortion clinics. It feels like it's a new tactic. I don't know that there's a precedent. You tell me. But what do you make of them using that?
Well, I mean, okay, what do we make of the fact that they basically used the Department of Justice not to use the word justice in its title, but to go after the enemies of Donald Trump, whether it be Attorney General Tish James, whether it be Jim Comey, whether it be now going after the ballots in Atlanta, in Fulton County, Georgia. This act is not supposed to be used to arrest journalists for doing their job when journalists, by the way, would be filming a civil rights march, or when journalists are filming what's going on at a church, or even if journalists were basically filming or reporting on what was going on at an abortion clinic. You can decide whether people protesting at those three sites should or should not happen, whether it's part of our precious right to dissent in America. But what you're not supposed to do is not distinguish between people who are covering it versus not. Let me put it this way. Do you remember the television clips that we saw in the 1960s about what was happening in the South during the Civil Rights Movement? One of the things that turned our country around was to be able to see it on their television screens at night when, people were being sprayed with hoses and dogs were being sicked on them in places like Alabama. If those journalists had been subject to what happened today, you might not have ever seen those videos. And how much worse would we have been?
We wouldn't have. And if people are deterred now, we won't see a lot of the videos we see. Don is, as you well know, and I've known him a long time, too, he has been a target of Trump for a long time. He is an independent journalist, so he's not working for a big major news organization. He's also a prominent black journalist. There are a lot of reasons, I guess, they could have decided Don was their target. Why do you think they decided?
I think it was partially because his lack of goodwill in this administration. And we know President Trump has a lot of traits, one of which is that he does go after the last shiny object that's put in front of him. And it could have been something that Don said during that protest. It was a convenient thing for them to do to send their message. Journalists of the United States, what did they do 4 or 5 days before that? They executed a search warrant on a Washington Post reporter to get evidence which would have been unheard of, even if she herself was not, quote, the target of their investigation. There used to be rules to protect journalists who gathered news from being forced to give up their sources. This is not a mistake. This is not an outlier, and it's not ad hoc. The first thing you do is you basically shut down the press. You shut down lawyers. You shut down universities. I'm asking people to understand that these are not random, unconnected events. It is an assault on everything we are dear in America.
You have a number of clients who are under assault and being targeted by the Trump administration. It's obviously Don Lemon. It's New York Attorney General Letitia James, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. You've talked about the through line of kind of the rise of authoritarianism. What do you see as the through line between all of these people that they are targeting? Prominent voices who are speaking out?
So there's a few there's maybe not one, but it's close to one through line. But it has like 3 threads. So we'll have a line with 3 threads. One is, if you have done anything in your career which has put you on the wrong side of Donald Trump's decision that you are a political enemy, you are on that thread. If you are somebody that stands in the way of his aggrandizement of power, like an independent Federal Reserve Board, you are on that thread. If you are somebody who he and his people think can send a message or be distracting, I mean, as you said in your intro today, what else happened today? There was a release of another tranche of Epstein material. Why is it that it's not a coincidence that when something like that happens, you're going to see a Don Lemon being investigated or being arrested? Because look at my left hand and you won't pay attention to the right. Those are the threads.
Do you think that I was thinking about that, too, because even though we didn't know that was going to happen until today, they knew it was going to happen last night. Do you think there's a connection there?
I don't exactly know that it's an equation. I think that people that sit in the room, the people like Stephen Miller and others who plot what happens in this administration, understand how you can move the gears to create a political atmosphere that you think will do you some good. But I think it's a number of things. Look, going after the press is definitely part of their agenda. Going after enemies has been part of the president's agenda for as long as he has been in public or private, by the way, right? So there are things that hold these things together, but there are things that bind them together. And all those together to come to a point where somebody can attack the independence of the Federal Reserve Board. Somebody can go after a prosecutor who went after Trump, and somebody can go after a journalist who did nothing more than cover the news like he did for 30 years.
You've been at this a very long time. You're a pretty unflappable person. Do you feel that these arrests have kind of crossed, I don't know if we need to call it a red line, but crossed a line that we haven't seen before in this country?
It has definitely crossed a line. It's been occasions in our country where bad things happen. I pointed out to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, where you can see individual police officers in a place in the South doing something to repress the rights of others, okay? That's happened in our unfortunate history. I don't think you've ever seen a time where all of this happens at the same time, where look what happened in just one place called Minnesota. In Minnesota, we now have had journalists, independent journalists, and Don Lemon as well, be charged with a crime for doing their job. We had 2 peaceful protesters killed. I mean, those are the kinds of things together that if you look at it from even close or far distance, it is unprecedented. But the good news is that there are things like a magistrate who at least tried to stand in the way of Don being charged. There are things like grand juries refusing to re-indict or try to indict Letitia James. There are juries that are rejecting the idea that cases go to trial. So it's not without hope, but boy, the warning sign is there that every fabric that is protecting us in the Bill of Rights is under attack.
Before I let you go, we obviously have seen Don out there today. What happens next here?
Well, I mean, he goes back to doing his job, which is really important because he won't back down. He has said it, and everybody knows Don knows he won't. So he'll do that. We have an appearance to go in Minnesota, as do the others that got arrested. And that is, as you said, everybody should pick up that 14-page indictment and look at each of what they are accused of. But in Dodd's case, when you do that, you'll go, One of the phrases, I think, if I remember in the indictment, is that in the church, he peppered the minister with questions. Hey, Jen, I have something to tell you. I think every night you pepper your guests with questions. That's kind of what journalists do. So we will attack this indictment based on its infringement of the First Amendment, putting aside the lack of evidence anyway. And hopefully the judicial system will start repairing what this administration tries to tear down.
We're going to talk to a couple of journalists who've been in exactly these circumstances about some of the accusations here that are very much doing journalism a little bit later in the show. Abbe Lowell, I know you have not gotten a lot of sleep. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be
really
here.
Appreciate it.
And I'm glad that people are paying attention to this now.